So yeah, then welcome also from my side. My name is Michael Friedli. I'm working at the Research Institute of Organic Agriculture, Friedli in Switzerland, where I'm leading the fruit production group. We do both research but also advisory service. And in the next lecture, I will give you some information about the principle of commercial variety testing for organic fruit production. And I will take the example of apple, because also at Frick, we have a variety testing orchard, where we're also testing new varieties and crossing. So I think in the terms of Mark, I would use the word modern varieties. Here, just some information about the content of my presentations. First, I will give you some information. What are then the requirements for a new variety? Later on, I will show you quickly the most important diseases, pests. We already heard some of them, the presentation of Mark Latter. Then I will go a little bit more into detail of the assessments in the variety testing that we do, but I will also just focus on some aspects because we don't have enough time for all. And then later on, I will also give you some information about the requirements from the market. So on this slide, you can see some of the requirements that new varieties have. So it's really a huge number of parameters. So I just clustered it a little bit for fruit quality, but also for tree, and then also for market and consumer. So for the fruit, we already heard some aspects. So they have to have a good appearance. The flavor should be good, the size, texture, firmness, acidity, of course, the storability. And then when it comes to the tree, also for the growing of the trees, we should have good or low susceptibility to diseases and pests. Then also the tree architecture is important, also for the growing. Then also the bearing habit, just the aspect that we just discussed at the end of the last lecture. So the also abiotic stress susceptibility. And then, of course, also the most important one is also the yield, and then in the end also the pack out of your yield. When it comes to the market, there are also a lot of different requirements, also depending a little bit how you market your fruits, but also some consumer preferences can differ from region or country. And then also an aspect that is becoming more important is also the sustainability. So here I will just go quickly through the most important diseases in organic apple production. I will just show you some information about it, and then later on in the next lecture by Clémence Boutry, you will hear more about the biology and then also about the management in organic apple production. So we already heard it several times before. Apple scab is the most important disease. And in modern varieties, some of them have the so-called RVI6 or in the past called VF resistance gene. This is just a monogenetic resistance. And we also have in many different regions, we have breakdown of this resistance. Then we also have some varieties with other resistant genes, for example, the RVI10. And we also have some varieties that have some partial resistance where we talk about general robustness. And beside the powdery mildew, with the apple scab, we also have powdery mildew that can have a big impact on the production. And there we also have certain varieties that have one resistant genes, and also some with some partial resistant also, where we talk about general robustness. Then another important disease is fire blight. It's bacterial disease. And also here we have some modern varieties that have one or more partial resistance, so general robustness. It is also a disease that can have, depending on the region, also the year, some big impact on apple production. There are, of course, also other diseases that can cause problems in the production. For example, the European canker. It's also depending a little bit on the region where you are. Then we also heard before, so anthracnose is something. Then also the sooty blotch is something that is mainly in organic apple production, can cause some issues, mainly for the later ripening varieties. Then also Marsanina apple blotch is disease that is becoming more and more problematic, especially in organic production and also in quite extensive apple production systems. Like it's mostly also done in high stem production. Yeah, and besides the diseases that we can have in the field, there are also a number of diseases that can cause losses during the storage. So here I just have some pictures of some diseases like Neofabrea, then Monilia, Botrytis, Penicillium, Coledotrichum, and also others. And also this Neofabrea is becoming more and more a problem, and there's also a lot of research is done for this disease. And also here in organic production, we know that some of the quite widely grown varieties, as for example also topaz, have quite some high susceptibility to this disease. But we also have some measurements to handle this topic, like the hot water treatment that is recommended, for example, for the variety topaz and also for other varieties. Yes, we not only have diseases, we also have a lot of different pests that we have to handle. So here we have also the most important one. So it's the codling moth that can have a big impact and cause quite some losses. Then also the apple blossom weevil, then the apple sawfly, and there are also a bunch of different aphids, like the rosy apple aphid, that can cause big problems, especially when you have young trees and you want to build up a good tree. This can be quite be problematic. And there are also some other aphids, but I won't go into much detail for the moment. So here on this table, you can see the different parameters that can be assessed in the apple variety testing. And you can see with the coloring, so different traits. So we have some traits of the tree that we have to look at, but also some abiotic stress, like for example, frost or sunburn. Then also biotic stresses, pests and diseases, and then also different fruit traits. And you just here can see throughout the year when it's more or less the best time to assess this. We already heard also this in the lecture of Mark Lutter, that you also have to know the biology, the cycle of the diseases and pests, and then to know where it's the best point in time to assess these different parameters. One of quite important topic is the phenology, so the flowering period. And here you can see how we assess this. So we have the beginning of the flowering, when around 10% of the flowers are opened. Then you have full blooming, where 50% of the flowers are opened. And then the end of the flowering, where around 60% of the petals are fading. And here on the image on the left bottom, you can see from one variety that we are testing in our orchard for the years 2020 to 2023, just the period when it's flowering, and you can see that you have some differences between the year. Therefore, it's really important when you assess a new variety that you have assess it over several years. Yeah, I think we heard before 5 years or even more, but it's also sometimes a little bit issue of budget for how long you can assess some variety. And here on the right hand side, you can see some nice images. So it's in German. It's a nice illustration from Agroscope. It's also available in French. And here we have some quite nice images about the different stages for apple. And similar publications also exist for pears and cherries and also apricots. And you can find this on the website from Agroscope. Besides the flowering period, the flower intensity is also quite important, and this needs to be assessed during the full blooming time. And we have the scale, also a 1 to 9 scale, where 1 is no flowers, and then just more flowers with a higher rate. So around 50% of flower gives a 5, and really the maximum amount of flowers would be then 100% with a scale of 9. And this is really something important, especially also for organic production, because with this assessment, you can really detect if a new variety or a breeding number shows some biennial bearing. And this is really crucial to know this for organic production, because in organic production, we don't have so much different possibilities to handle this if you have varieties with strong biennial bearing habit. So on this slide, you can also see some examples. These are some real examples from our variety testing sites. So on the left-hand side, you can also see an variety with a quite regular bearing habit. So you can see here the scale from 1 to 9. And in all the years, more or less a 7 or around a 6 were given to this variety. Whereas on the right-hand side, you can see a variety with really high biennial bearing. So in the year 2019, you almost have no flowers, and the next year full flowering, almost no flower again like this. And this is really almost impossible to get a good production with a variety that shows quite strong biennial bearing like this. So I think I can go a little bit quick through this slide. So we heard it, apple scab is really the most important disease in apple production, or also in organic apple production. And therefore, it's really important to assess this. And this is the scale that we use to assess the apple scab on the leaves. With also 1 means no infections, and then a 9 is really the tree is really completely affected. This would be quite a very strong proportion of affected leaves. And in our region, the best time for the assessment is around in June, I would say. And besides the assessment of apple scab on leaves, it's also possible to assess the scab on the fruits. Then this later on, of course, will be towards the harvesting period. And we not only have diseases, we also have pests. I just said in one of the previous slides that aphids can be a big problem, and also therefore it's also important to assess this. And here you can just see an example of the scale that is proposed. So also with the 1 that we have no symptoms, and then with a 9 with really a maximum of infections, then this tree would be really heavily infested. So then more or less the whole tree would look like this image that you can see here on the left-hand side. And here you can see some tree characteristics. So one characteristic that we also assess is the relative tree growth vigor with a 1 to 9 scale. With 1 is an extremely weak one, 9 is really heavy growth, and this can be really assessed also in a single year. And it's also important to have it relative to some other varieties, so some reference varieties that are grown in the same location also, and also in the same orchard. And another aspect is also the tree architecture. So you can see here on the image on the right, so the different scores. So 1 with quite an upright tree architecture, and then a 5 with quite spreading architecture, and then a 9 with quite some weeping tree architecture. And this can be quite important for the whole management and later on of this variety. So also when it comes to pruning and also maybe to thinning, so depending on which system you use, then it's can be quite difficult if you have architecture like this or also an architecture like that. Yes, what I also wanted to say is also this global tree foliage gel. So is a slide that I got from Mark Lutter. He already said some words about before, and in my opinion, this is also quite an important assessment. So it's really a combination of disease tolerance, but also robustness and also nutrient uptake efficiency. So this can be, in my point of view, more important than just one single resistance for maybe one disease. Then, of course, the apples are grown to produce fruits. Therefore, the crop load and also in the end, the yield is really the most important trait. And in the end, the farmers, they need to earn some money to also to live from the fruit production. And the crop load is also assessed annually. This can be done by per tree or maybe also per tree group, depending on how many trees you have in your orchard. And this is ideally done around 2 months after the full flowering, also with the 1 to 9 scale, with the one where you have no fruits to very low fruits, and with the 9 extremely high crop load. And then on the right-hand side, you can see 2 graphs of 2 different varieties, also from our testing orchard. And you can see on the top a variety with quite some regular yield, so more or less in every year you have a similar yield, or also a raising yield, because also the tree is getting bigger and bigger. And on the bottom you can see that, for example, in the year 2019, there's just a small blue bar, maybe you cannot see it. And also 2021 and 2023, you have quite a low yield. So this is a variety with quite some strong biennial bearing, and it's really not what we are looking for. Yeah, then in the end, when you have harvested your trees, the fruit quality is becoming quite important. There you have different parameters that we are looking at. So one is the firmness, then also the sugar content, then also the starch degradation, then the size we already heard before, then the weight, the overcolor, and then of course also the storability, and also the degustation is quite important, just to also to taste the fruits, to rate them, what is the flavor, the texture, and so on. And for this we also do quite a lot of effort. You can do this either manually, so with, for example, a penetrometer to measure the firmness, and also some simple tools just to measure the sugar content. And there are also some automated measurement systems, like, for example, the Pamprenelle. So it's a system where you just have to place the fruits, and then they are just, so different parameters are measured automatically. Here also again some figures from our testing orchard. So here you can see the different fruit sizes. So the maximum is 85, and then below 60 millimeters. This is because in Switzerland, for the organic production, if you want to sell your fruits for the market, there is the range is between 60 millimeter and 85 millimeters, but this can also differ a little bit between the countries. In some countries, maybe bigger fruits are more looked for, or smaller ones. And here you can see then the proportion of these different fruit size classes, and this is quite some nice variety with a lot of fruits with 75 to 70 or 65 to 70 millimeters, so quite some good fruit size. And what we also do at our testing site, we do a lot of degustation, so tasting of the fruits, where different people rate the fruits. We give an overall rating, we give a rate for crispness, also for the firmness, and then also for the flavor. So we give one note for the flavor intensity, but also for the quality. Then one also quite important aspect is the juiciness, and then also the sugar acid ratio. In our testing site, we also have a cold storage where we store the fruits. And here on this slide, you can see an example of one variety. So it was harvested at the beginning of October. Then we just took out some fruits around 2 months later, and you can see that the fruits are looking quite nice. And then again, 2.5 months later, so at the end of January. And now I just zoom in a little bit. I don't know if you can see it, but you can see that on this on several fruits we have these brown spots, for example, here and also here. And this is a variety that really has some quite high susceptibility to Neofabrea, so it's really quite difficult then to grow in organic production. But what I also have to say is that we only store them in our cold storage, so it's no controlled atmosphere, and we also do no hot water treatment. But yeah, this is really not a nice example for the storability of a new variety. Then when we take out the fruits, we also do different measurements of the firmness. You can see in this figure the date from September to May, also from different years, from 2018 to 2023. And you see how the development of the firmness is. So it's really starting on a good and high level, and then it's decreasing more and more. And this is also quite important aspect to look at. Then, yeah, we discussed it just before in the end of the last lecture. So the robustness against abiotic stress is becoming more and more important in the future, but it's also sometimes not that easy to assess. So I think the most obvious aspects are frost damage. So you can assess this after a frost event. So you can take some flowers. You can look at if you have some damages. You can see here some damaged flowers. So this is flowers from apricots, and here on the left hand side you can see an intact flower. Then something that we really also observe more and more in the past is that we see some sunburn, like you can see it here on this image on apples. And this, yeah, it's all depending on the year, but if you really have some high sunny periods in summer, you can also assess this. But yeah, we really have to say that this is some aspect that so far in the breeding of apple was not with a high priority. But there is a breeding program. It's called Hot Climate Partnership. It's a collaboration between companies from New Zealand and Spain. They started around 20 years ago, and they have some variety. It's called Tutti. You can also see here an image that should be more prone to be produced really in high climatic conditions. And they have also new breeding numbers, and they are also being tested at the moment. Yeah, here on this slide, you can also see some data that I received from Mark Lutter, for example, for the susceptibility to Elsinoe piri. And you can also see that there are quite some differences between the different varieties that they tested. So with a low susceptibility to quite some high susceptibility. Then, yep, coming back maybe also to the project InnoBreed, we heard also in the introduction from Khaled that there are different working groups. And one aspect that is the partners from Serida and from CRA are developing is a fast screening method to assess the European canker. And you can see just some images of these methods they are developing together. Now let's come to the market. We saw maybe better in the presentation of Mark. So Apple really offer quite great diversity. This can also be a channel. So depending on the market channel that you have, if you sell your apples direct, or if you sell it to a wholesale trade, also the number of clients that you have. Then also a little bit depending on the preference of your consumers. This can also differ between the different countries or regions, or also between the age of the consumers. Yeah, and then you have really huge diversity regarding the flavor groups. You have some sweet varieties, some balanced, some more acidic ones. Then you have different colors, shapes, sizes. And an aspect that's also quite important is also the sales period. So it's really important to know when you want to sell your fruits. So there, the storability becomes more and more important. And this really can be quite a big challenge. And to overcome this, Fiebel also in collaboration with Coop, so it's one of the big two retailers in Switzerland, developed around, I think it's already more than 20 years ago, the so-called flavor group concept. And the idea behind was really to keep diversity, but also to simplify the information. And on this figure here, you can see how this system is working. So here we have on the left the production, and you can see that we have really a lot of different varieties that are produced. And then the retailer, they can order on some defined archetypes. So you have some variety that have a similar flavor group. And then in the end, for the consumer, there are just 3 flavor groups that you have on the labels for the different varieties. And you can see here an example. So it's the variety Pinova. So on the back, you can see how which variety it is. But in the end, for the consumer, it's just labeled as some sweet, mild to sweet variety. And this is really quite some nice concept because it has offers the possibility to produce many different varieties, but also with maybe not a big area of production, or you can also already go to the market with some newer varieties where you don't have a really big production. Because if we talk to different retailers, they often say, yeah, you can bring a new variety, but then you have to bring this and this much of different tons. And you also maybe need to replace some variety that is already in the shelf. And with this system, you really can also go with newer varieties with maybe not a big production already to the market. This is really something that is quite useful. Yeah, and besides the work that we are doing at Fiebel, we also have quite some exchange also between different variety tester, and I think quite some important collaboration is the UFRIN network. So it stands for European Fruit Research Institutes Network. And within this, the UFRIN, there are different working groups, and we are also part of the working group apple and pear and variety rootstock testing. And you can see here on the maps the different organizations that are belonging to this working group. And within this working group, we exchange information. We also meet regularly. So in March, there was a meeting in Austria, in Graz, where we also exchange our assessments. And also it's really important that you can also validate your own results when you see that also in other locations they have similar assessments, then your data is becoming more robust. But of course, we also have some national exchange. So with other organizations, it's also important from one step that you also go to the organic farms. So with a higher number of trees, then you really have the direct feedback of the producers. And also projects like InnoBreed projects are really important. So you heard it, we have different working groups. So we exchange data, but also one big topic that we do is the harmonization of the assessment, so that we assess our data in the same way. So like this, it's also then more and more better to compare it. So it's really something quite important. I just said at the beginning, we not only do research, but we also do advisory service, and we have a lot of different materials. So we have different variety lists. So they are mainly in German and in French. And we also have some nice instruction sheets. They are also in German and also in French. So for example, for plant protection in the organic apple production, there are also some nice instruction sheets also for organic stone fruit production. And also during the season, our advisors, they offer to the farmer so-called bulletins. So in regular time points, they just send it to the farmers. They give some information about the plant protection, but also about some management issues like irrigation or nutrient management and so on. And this all the publications from Friedli you can also download for free from this website, so friedli.org. And there is the so-called shop where you can download these different publications. And also on this website bioaktuell.ch, so it's only in German and French. You can also download different materials, and there are also some interesting articles regarding organic fruit production. And yes, with this, I'm already at my the end of my presentation.